The second key concept to think about when you're making your map is to think about your composition and the intentional arrangement of the different map elements you have and what the reader expects those to be, and in what cases do you have flexibility to manipulate those or change those or restructure those different compositional elements to make your map more aesthetically pleasing, to make it more artistic? Or is the situation such that you have to put your compositional elements in a particular way because that's what your reader expects, right? So the composition, that's the arrangement of all these different map elements, your map, your legend, your title, your scale, all those things within your um, within your layout, right? And so depending on your audience, depending on the form or the medium of your publication, that changes how you can interact with the compositional elements. So for instance, if you're making a map for National Geographic, for instance, they have a very rigorous and distinct style that includes everything from, the page layout to the alignment of elements to the style of the locator map to the style of locator globes or insets to symbolization to color to font. So there are all these different elements, all these different compositional elements are kind of predetermined. And if you work for National Geographic, for instance, um, so with that, then you have a lot of or a lot less flexibility, I would say, in terms of like how you're going to put these different elements on your page, because there's a set standard that is existing within that organization or institution that you're making the map for. Right? Another example of a National Geographic map, you can see that it almost looks identical in a lot of ways, right? Because it has that same structural format. Similarly, if you were to make maps for the National Park Service, you have a pretty set in place set of symbols that you use, sets of fonts that you use, sets of colors that represent different features, different categories that are matched to different compositional features or aspects, right? So you have a very closed design, is what it's called, right? Closed in the sense that a lot of those different choices that you have as the cartographer are really limited or closed off to you because there's a kind of a predetermined set of symbols or colors or fonts or styles that you use for that particular organization. Similarly, if you were to make road atlases, here's Rand McNally, right, has a very distinctive style. Or if you were to make maps for other journalistic publications, whether that's online publications or print publications, right, you have a certain style set that you're working within the realm of to make that comprehensible, to make that recognizable, to make it fit stylistically within the other maps and visual products that exist within that publication, right? So here's like a Washington Post map publication. This is essentially what all Washington Post maps look like, particularly weather maps have this similar type of symbology on the top, similar type of labeling of features, base map elements, etc., etc. Whereas if you have a little bit more creative license or a little bit more aesthetic aspects to your map, then you have a lot more flexibility in how you're gonna set up your compositional arrangement, right? How you're gonna symbolize different elements, how you're gonna lay those out so they work together as a cohesive whole. So in this sense, that's what's known as more of an open composition, right? And just open that you have a lot more flexibility, a lot more openness to make those decisions for yourself. They're not kind of bound by the templates or the constraints of the organization they're coming from, right? So a lot of times when you see compositions like this, they're more oriented towards design elements. They're more oriented towards creative projects as opposed to things that would come from a particular industry. That's not always the case. Sometimes different magazines, different publications will have creative opportunities or creative spaces for map making. But generally speaking, when you see projects like this, those are typically more creative, self-driven projects as opposed to closed industry produced products. Right, you can see, here with different stylizations of font, different color combinations, different labeling techniques, different types of data visualizations, all sorts of different things that go into making an open composition. So, key distinction to think about when you're making your map is like if you're making this map for or through a particular institution or organization or industry, then those have particular design compositional constraints, creating a closed constraint or closed compositional framework. Whereas if you're making a project that is more individually driven, creative, aesthetically pleasing, artistic, you might have a more of an open compositional framework.